Hello, welcome to the Quakes Motel. My name's Conan. Masters of the Beats Part 2 today. In Part 1, I looked at Kenny Dope and his beats in the kind of early 90s. Today, as promised, I'm going to be doing Part 2 on Kenny Dope, and it's more kind of 95, 96 onwards. Let's jump in. Now, in my last video, I did point out that the information that I was sharing was based on interviews, word of mouth, speaking to other artists that were around Kenny at that kind of time. But, you know, I'm not guaranteeing that it's 100% accurate. But, you know, it's pretty in-depth research, I guess I would say, because I was deep in it, in that whole scene in the 90s. And, you know, obviously our paths did cross sometimes. I'm not going to go into as much detail today. What I'm more going to do is just cover, like I explained in my first video, I feel that Kenny has kind of gone through phases in his career, in his beat programming career. And in the early 90s, it was more based around the SP1200, as far as I know. And then going into the mid to the late 90s, it was MPC 3000. And in the mid to late 90s, there was a big scene that came up in London and then spread throughout the rest of the world. Broken beat scene, influenced by kind of hip hop, Afro, house, soca, samba, Brazilian, you know, just loads of different kind of influences on the beats and the rhythms. But it was still played in house sets, and there was a lot of us playing it around about that time. People like Phil Asher, Bugs in the Attic, those kind of people were, I guess, the pioneers of it. But we were all playing it at that kind of time. And Louis and Kenny were working for Talking Loud Records, and they were doing the New Eureka Soul project. And I think Kenny was kind of influenced, or at least he was into that kind of stuff. He was playing a lot of stuff like that at the time when he was DJing. And into that kind of period, the New Eureka Soul period, his beats were changing, in my opinion, to less kind of 4 on the floor, gritty 12-bit sound to more a bit of a cleaner, punchier sound from the MPC 3000, and there were more kind of Afro influences to his beats. Other people doing that kind of thing at the time was myself, obviously, DJ Gregory, Real People. There was a bunch of us, basically, and it was a really cool scene. And like I said, we were still playing it in our house sets as well. So today I'm going to, on the S2400, I'm going to make another Kenny style beat, Kenny type beat, I think they say. But I will say that the sounds are not 12-bit. I've kept them quite clean. I've kept them closer to the MPC 3000. The sounds I'm going to be using are actually straight off my MPC 3000 and 2000 from the mid-90s. And I haven't touched them at all. So they're pretty much straight out the box, straight onto the S2400. So let's just get my QWERTY keyboard. Just makes things a little bit easier. So there are a lot of Afro influences and a lot of Brazilian influences. And whilst it did still have the 4 on the floor kind of going on and the hi-hats going on in the normal places, the snares and the hi-hats and some other percussion impact sounds and stuff kind of built the beat, and it just had more of a kind of head nodding hip hop influence, like I said, Afro influence, and it wasn't just straight up 4 on the floor. A broken beat, which is why it was kind of called the broken beat scene. Also, I want to point out that from memory, you know, because we're going back nearly 30 years, I might not be getting 100% of this right. I was in that scene. I was playing in London at the time with people like Phil and Kenny and Gregory and the whole Africanism lot, kind of late 90s. But, you know, memories fade. So some of it might not be 100% accurate, and it might not be out of the mouth of the person that I say it might. But I just want to point that out just to save people going, oh, no, it didn't happen like that. This is how I remember it. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. My memory's fairly decent. It's not faded too badly just yet. So a lot of the source sounds were a combination of drum machine sounds and acoustic sounds sampled off breaks, off old funk, off old jazz. And that carries right through Kenny's career, in my opinion. And a bunch of us, you know, we were all doing that. And the kind of period of time, the New Eureka Soul period, I think there were a lot more acoustic sounds. I know they were working with live drummers as well. So I'm going to kind of go down the route of the Jocelyn Brown, It's Alright I Feel It, off the New York and Soul album. So like I said, it's a mix. This kit is a mix of, you know, like for instance, they're off old brakes, that's off brakes, and there's nothing on that because it's obviously MIDI. Let's just take it back to 8. So I'm looking for a kind of, let's go with that kick. Right, so let's just make sure the metronome's on. And let's take the swing to around about 63%. We can always change it, but that's a good place to start. So a lot of the time, it would start off with 4 on the floor. That's how I used to build the beats. And then I might start changing things around with the kick. But just to always start with 4 on the floor with the kick. And then I would probably start building up on the snares. Let's just change the tempo and make that 122 just a little bit faster. So I'm looking for a nice big chunky. That could be a good one actually. It's kind of so just building up. I'm going to do a little bit more of a top line with the hi-hats. I want like a long hat, like a real open one. Oh, that one might work. So just building, just want to give that first snare a bit more kind of weight. Okay, feeling that. Let's just say save kit. Actually, we'll save the project as it is. I've got the kit already saved. So I want to build the top line a little bit more. There's all subtle little builds in the hats to build that kind of top line with the hats, and it kind of creates the groove. Now, I've said in videos before that you can have 4 on the floor, and if you just have 4 on the floor, there's no swing, there's no groove to it. It's how you program the snares and the hats that really do start creating the groove, and that's where you can start playing around with the swing. So a thing that a lot of us were doing at the time, and especially Kenny Dope, was you would have 4 on the floor, but then you would take another kick and you would use something like that. It's kind of an impact kick, I would call that. It's almost a statement kick, if you like. And then he would build around the 4 on the floor with that kick. Not sure about that actually. I do like that kick, and I've used it on many tracks. I think we might have used that on Africanism, one of our Africanism tracks, possibly Don't You Go Away. Maybe something a little bit tamer. Yeah, I kind of like that, a bit tamer. It's just to kind of give it a bit of head noddiness, kind of a real hip hop type sort of thing going on there. Okay, I'm liking where we're going with that. So again, just building, trying different ideas out. So just adding subtle things in there. Now listen what happens if I've got it on sector 63. Let's try it 65. I'm changing the whole pattern amount here, not individual sounds. See, that's a little bit too much for me. 63 was a pretty good guess. I've written a lot of beats with 63% swing. But watch what happens if I take it back to 50. It just completely loses it. Underneath that, you've got 4 on the floor and the hat in the same place that it always is. But it's the little flicks, the little ghosts, the little additional parts, the extra little kick, the way that the snare drum is laid, that gives it the groove. That's what gets your head nodding. And with the swing of 63, 65, 67 even is good for house kind of stuff like this as well. I'm going to take it 67, we'll have a listen. Now, you see, that's almost swinging now for me. You know, it's a bit too much. Kind of entering Todd Terry territory there. That gets my head nodding, so I know it's in the right place. So there you have it. I wanted that to be a bit more brief than the last one. I didn't feel like I needed to go into as much detail as I did in the last one, and I did ramble just a little bit. But that for me was a period of time where, you know, where broken beat and hip hop and disco was really starting to get back into house again. In the early 90s, you know, with a lot of the Strictly Rhythm stuff, a lot of the deep house stuff coming out of New Jersey and New York, and then consequently out of the rest of the UK, it was quite electronic. And I feel that what the broken beat scene started doing in that kind of mid to latter part, you know, with people like Phil and Kenny and Gregory and a whole bunch of us, it started reintroducing a bit more of an acoustic sound into house music. And, you know, and that's carried through to today, I think. You know, I think it wasn't a massive part of the house music scene, but I think it was quite an important part of the house music scene. And I definitely feel that Kenny's beats were influenced by that. You know, I know he was deep into it. I used to DJ with him around about that time at places like The End and The Ministry, and he used to play a lot of stuff like that, as did Louis, as did Kerry Chandler. You know, all of us were kind of playing that kind of sound. Joe Clazel, the Ibadan stuff, you know, it was kind of bringing Afro into it more, and hip hop and more acoustic sounds. And that's kind of where I feel that Kenny's beats went after the early 90s, 94, 95. The bounce was kind of starting to bring that kind of groove into his beats. And I mean, you know I go on about the bounce a lot in my videos, but for me, that's one of the best house beats ever written, hands down. The intricate yet simplicity of that beat, the intricacy yet simplicity of that beat, it's just, I could just, you know, I could listen to it all day long, and it's influenced me so much, and many others. But so that's basically, you know, part two of the Kenny thing. And I feel that Kenny then kind of progressed into perhaps more computer-based music. A lot of us were giving up on our hardware, to be honest, in the early 2000s, and started using, you know, the idea that you could just walk around with a laptop and just bang out a beat on your laptop with, you know, some of the earlier VSTs that we were using at that time. And I think hardware at that point, going into the 2000s, started taking a little bit more of a back seat in house music. For me anyway, and certainly for a lot of my peers at the time that I was going into their studios and stuff. So thanks for watching. This is the Quakes Motel. My name's Conan. Till next time.